So, hi everyone. Welcome to the Adaptive Cards Community Call of March 2021. I'm Matt Heidinger. I'll be your host, actually, just for the start of this call. So we meet every month on the second Thursday of the month at 9 a.m. Pacific time. If this is your first time here, welcome. If you're a repeat guest, we welcome you back as well. What I'm going to do today is do a quick update of the roadmap with some dates-ish. And then some friends from our Teams and Outlook group are going to share some details on what we're calling kind of this universal action model, which really makes it, if you're building cards for Microsoft Teams today, or you're building cards for Outlook today, if you're doing both, you're acutely aware of some of the pain points. It's actually not possible to write a consistent backend that supports both. So this universal action model is intended to kind of bridge that. Starting out with Teams and Outlook and some other places within Microsoft 365, but the pattern should apply long term so that we'll start to be able to have more formalized communication with backends that can refresh cards and keep cards kind of more in sync. And so this is going to be a early look into that, some timelines and how you can use it in Teams and Outlook, and they'll take it from there. So hopefully that's what you're here to see. With that, quick look, and I kind of said dates-ish. So threw this slide together because I realized we haven't shared this in a little bit. So there's this link here, the aka.ms/AC roadmap for adaptive card roadmap. That is your best place to go. I've got a version of it right over here, actually. Yeah, nowish. It'll take you to this page. And I try and share this kind of every call just to make sure people are aware of it. This is your best place to have a voice into what we build next. And what you'll see is 3 tabs along the top, things that are under consideration. These are just a lot of the ideas we've explored, from SVG support to a rating control, responsive UI, client-side updating. Anything in this first tab, we're aware of it, but we're not quite at a place where we know when we'll work on it, or even that we would necessarily get to it in the some future. Planned, on the other hand, is stuff we know we're going to do. We're either started on it or it'll be started on soon. And I'm just going to break this down into a few things. But what helps us the most is you can see these little numbers next to things. And it is very easy for you to tell us what you need and give us a little bit of insight into why you need it. So one of the most popular requested features is this input choice set autocomplete. So you can actually search from a drop-down list, server side, connect to a server, and actually get some better data back than you can today with just a static list of things. So what you can do is tell us how important this is to you. Is it nice to have, important, or critical? Give us a little bit of info and just an email. You don't have to create an account, don't have to create a password or anything. Very low friction way for you to kind of steer the direction that we go with adaptive cards. If you don't see what you need in here, then you can go in and kind of submit an idea and also just tell us in general what it is. And we go through that feedback when we start to plan our next release. So check that out, take advantage of that, and let us know what would help you the most. That said, I've got some details and quote unquote ETAs. I had to throw an ETA on there because I knew it would be the first question. So I did. I tried a bunch of different ways to put dates in here, and I couldn't come up with anything that felt right. So we're still trying to figure out exactly when. But for Schema version 1.4, what you're going to hear more about with this universal action model is a new action type called Action.Execute, and that's coming out nowish. The website in particular, Paul, if you're on the call, just deployed it maybe like 6 minutes ago. So we fly by the seat of our pants here on adaptive cards, and so you're seeing what we're seeing. So on the website today, on Action.Execute, you will learn all about this new action type from Shiladitya and folks, but now it's documented here, so you'll see this new action type documented. You'll learn more about it and how to use it, but now it's live on our documentation as of version 1.4. So that's going to be the 1.4 release coming out this month. I mean, I can safely say this month. After that, we've got a whole bunch of things that are soonish. And those are going to come out anytime between now and basically the Microsoft Build conference, which I think is in May. So between like now and summer, you'll start to see a lot of these other features start to come in. So Teams has a custom extension. We talked a lot about these last month. So if you weren't with us last month and want to know what all these features are, we did a pretty big deep dive into all of them. And when you'll start to see them in Teams. So some of them are small, like password masking and input text, but then the dynamic autocomplete, huge feature, actions being able to kind of overflow into an ellipsis flyout, very highly requested feature. So you'll start to see those trickle out in Teams. The reason I kind of had to say soonish is that if you're rendering cards today and you are using, say, our iOS, Android SDK, maybe the React Native SDK supported by Imaginea, we don't have timelines on when those will be in the SDK. So you're going to see them in Teams first, and then we're going to take that code out of Teams, port it back into the SDKs, the general purpose SDKs, so that anyone else can start to take advantage of them. So it's a little bit staggered, and that's kind of why I really couldn't put it to anything more than just kind of soonish. But we know we're working on it, and that's going to be the general 1.5 release. We also have a pretty good handle on at least 2 of the features we're going to have to do immediately following 1.5, and one of them is an actual table element. So a lot of people are using column sets to create table-like structures, which works. It's not the most fun, and if you have any kind of accessibility needs, it's not fun at all. The column set structure, it's not accessible one bit. So the table element will be much more user-friendly if you are showing tabular data, and also be much more accessible to everyone who might be interacting with your cards. After that is one of the bigger advancements we're making in adaptive cards. It's called these adaptive components, and these are these on-demand declarative components, higher level components like files or people or these things that you want to drop in and not necessarily provide the layout. So we've talked a lot about adaptive components in the past on some previous calls, so feel free to take a look through the archive, and we'll link to the archive later on. But this is sort of a gist of when we think we're going to get to it. I don't have any kind of timeline on adaptive components, and my dev team is on this call and would be upset with me if I put anything other than end of year question mark. We are trying to figure out when we can get through a lot of these things, but that would be my dream. If we had this stuff out by the end of the year, it'd be pretty fantastic. So if you have any questions on the roadmap, please feel free to send them in chat. I'll be monitoring chat. And we do have a dedicated Q&A section, but for the rest of this, I'm going to hand it over to Karan and Shiladitya, and they're going to dive into this universal action stuff. So we'll be monitoring chat and helping you out, and I'll let them kind of handle how they want to run the rest, but we will have a dedicated Q&A section at the end as well.
Sure. Thanks a ton for that, Matt. Thanks for the introduction. And with that, let me share my screen. Thanks all for joining. It's wonderful to have you all on the call with us. Today, we'll talk about how universal actions, our newest feature in adaptive cards, help you elevate your end user experiences on both Teams and Outlook. I am Karan. I am a product manager in Outlook, and I am joined by Shiladitya, who's my peer from Teams.
Hey folks, glad to meet everyone. I will let Karan continue and not interrupt his thunder right now.
With that, let me take a quick moment and ask if most of you are already well versed with the extent of capabilities and scenarios that adaptive cards light up on both Teams and Outlook. If you can type in your responses on chat, and Matt or Shiladitya can let me know the general consensus from the group.
Yeah, we'll probably have it. Feel free to do some intro. We'll have some people that should do emails, if you're familiar with it. But we get some new people every time, so definitely just kind of feel free to do a quick lap around.
Sure, thanks for that, Matt. So if I were to summarize the overall value prop of adaptive cards in one sentence, it's around enabling you to take quick actions right from within Teams and Outlook. At its core, adaptive cards allow you to safeguard your productivity and acknowledge content without ever having to leave the hub of your choice, which could very well be either Teams or Outlook, and in the process, eliminate context switching completely. Here are a few of our most popular scenarios. I'm sure every time you miss a chat message on Teams, you get reminded of that with an actionable email in Outlook. You can reply to those missed activities from within an email thanks to adaptive cards. In addition to that, some of our biggest partners such as My Analytics and SharePoint use adaptive cards to enable you to book focus time or give access requests from within email or chat. Again, all of these enable you to take quick actions without ever having to leave your canvas of choice and thereby safeguarding your productivity. Here are a few snippets of adaptive cards that show that these work cross-platform, cross-devices, so you get a great look and feel across mobile and desktop devices. And then they also run cross apps. So it means that adaptive cards work seamlessly on both Teams and Outlook. And the examples that you see here are from Poly, Asana, etc. In a nutshell, adaptive cards are actionable, give a native performance in both mobile as well as desktop devices, and beautifully blend into every app, including Teams and Outlook. Now, here is a very high level overview of our M365 ecosystem. I'm sure most of you are well versed with Outlook and Teams. And in addition to that, we have the likes of web chat, Windows, Cortana, etc. And the challenge that such a broad ecosystem presents is that while layout and rendering for adaptive cards are universal, the action handling is not. And this is also a question that I just saw on the chat. What it implies is that today there is an inconsistent action model between Teams and Outlook. So if you were to use an adaptive card based integration on Teams, you would want to use action.submit as your action type. And if you wanted to build an application for the same scenario in Outlook, you would be tempted to use action.http as the action type. Hence, you see that the action model is inconsistent and there previously did not exist any way to have the same adaptive card payload work on both Teams and Outlook. This presented a disconnected deployment model for Outlook and Teams. And thinking in terms of three key personas for a developer partner, for an engineer, there was lack of a consistent extensibility model. And due to the disparate action types, action.http or action.submit, the engineers were asked to build two separate adaptive card-based applications, one each for Outlook and Teams. For your end users, it implied challenges in app discovery and an inconsistent user experience across Teams and Outlook. So if you were to acknowledge content from Teams, that acknowledgement wouldn't really get reflected on Outlook or vice versa, because these were two completely separate and independent apps. And for an IT admin, this implied complexity in deploying and managing disparate applications across an enterprise because they had to manage multiple layers of applications due to the inconsistent action model. And we thought, why not give it a shot to unify these experiences across Teams and Outlook and come up with a universal action model. In this universal action model, we introduced a new action type called Action.Execute, which would seamlessly work on both Outlook and Teams. So you no longer need to worry about using either of action.http or action.submit, you can simply have action.execute in your adaptive card payload, and that payload would just work completely fine on both Teams and Outlook. And wait, there's more to it. Now we have also introduced a refresh card mechanism, and action.execute can now return a new card to replace the existing card in place. This wasn't an option that existed in Teams in the older versions of adaptive cards, but in our newest launch 1.4, now you get to see in place refresh cards getting returned on Teams as well. Here is an example that shows how the same payload reflects and renders on both Teams and Outlook. Now you no longer have to build two separate applications or two separate payloads. The same payload syncs and works seamlessly across both these canvases. In a summary, Universal Action Model eases the developmental effort for your engineering team by providing a platform-agnostic deployment model. Your team now needs to build only one application that uses the same adaptive card payload with Action.Execute, which would work on both Teams and Outlook. And to be honest, the greatest value prop for me is for our end users. Now they get to see seamless synchronization between their emails in Outlook and their chat messages in Teams. What it implies is that any acknowledgement, any action that's taken within Outlook gets reflected seamlessly in Teams and vice versa. And we do have a lot of mocks to further illustrate this point graphically. And by the way, Outlook and Teams are just the tip of the iceberg. We do plan to extend this offering to all other M365 hubs that we saw at the very beginning, including the likes of Cortana, Windows, and Office. Now, before I delve deeper into scenarios and how we really elevate your end user experiences, I would want to take a pause and see if there are any questions around the value prop itself.
Yeah, just a quick one. So as far as I understood, the 1.4 and Action.Execute and all that is already available in Teams right now. So I can send new cards already to Teams, but not to Outlook.
So both Teams and Outlook clients are in the process of enabling support for 1.4 or Action.Execute for that matter. So I'll let Shiladitya respond to if we already have that flexibility in Teams, but yes, in Outlook, this is something that's going to be available within a month.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Yeah, on Teams, Tim, you can switch on developer preview and you'd be able to use Action.Execute there. And similar timelines as Outlook, you'd be able to, like together, you'd be able to use Action.Execute on both places.
So in summary, if you are asking about when we would be ready in production, we are looking at close to a month's timeline. After that, you would be able to see Action.Execute Adaptive Cards 1.4 in action on both Teams and Outlook, and also get to see the interop or the synchronization between the two. All right, any other questions? Great. With that, let me delve deeper into two of our most popular scenarios. The first scenario is around being able to approve vacation requests from within Teams and Outlook. Let's think in terms of a story. Pat is a hardworking employee and after a few months at work plans to take some time off and raises a request in their favorite vacation approval tool that generates an email to his manager, Kat. Now, in a typical setup, you would imagine Kat receiving an email upon opening which she would see a link to an external site, their vacation approval site, wherein she can go verify all the details and hit approve or reject. However, thanks to adaptive cards, now Kat can acknowledge and approve this vacation request right from within Outlook or Teams. This is how the view would appear on a mobile device. Kat sees actionable content. She is able to see all the necessary details. She decides to click on approve, and that's it. By a single click, Kat was able to approve Pat's vacation request, that too within fraction of a second, and thereby safeguarding her productivity as well. And since we are talking about Action.Execute, the best part is that this acknowledgement also gets reflected in Teams, and we'll show how that works in a minute.
Karen, if I could stop you real quick, we do have one hand up from Paul. Paul, do you want to ask your question real quick?
Thank you. Just real quick on the Action.Execute, you had previously mentioned the React Native SDK would sort of be trailing in the implementation of some of these new features. That's currently our primary delivery channel is through the mobile. Do you have an idea of sort of when the Action.Execute would be implemented, or is that sort of in the soonish or laterish category of the time?
Yeah, not to overuse my soonish joke. So the React Native renderer in particular is maintained by our community. I was scanning the list to see if anyone is on that call. I have a sync with them, meeting with them next week where we're going to talk about some React Native updates, so I can get confirmation then. They're usually pretty quick after things get announced. So if you're following along on the get, are you using the Imaginea one? Do you know?
Yeah, I'm using the Imaginea currently, but we've actually forked it and done our own implementations to get it to where we need it. So I'm just trying to figure out if there will be a catch up on that, or if there's a significant lag, or maybe I'll end up being the one that does it.
Yeah, since I don't see anyone on the call, I can't answer that, but you should feel free to raise that question on the GitHub repo too. They do monitor the GitHub repo, and we have a React Native tag, so feel free to ask there, and that'll probably be the easiest way to reach out to them.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Okay, take it away.
Right. Sure. Thanks, Matt, and thanks for the question. All right. Moving ahead, this is how the view appears on a wider Outlook desktop screen. You again see that Kat is able to view all the necessary details from within her email. Click on approve and be done with it. And let's also take a moment to appreciate that Kat benefits from seeing an acknowledgement instantaneously. And she knows that the vacation request has already been approved and it's one lesser task for her day. Now, this is how the view appears in Teams. The manager, Kat, would receive an adaptive card in her personal chat with Contoso, the company's bot. And again, within a single click on approve, Kat can approve this request and benefit from seeing an instantaneous refreshed card as well. And the best part is that you as an engineer in Contoso no longer need to worry about whether Kat prefers approving these emails in Outlook or prefers approving the chat messages in Teams, because you just need to send one card that magically appears on both Teams and Outlook, and Kat has the flexibility to make her approval from any of the two hubs. And once approved, the card refreshes across both Teams and Outlook, ensuring that both these hubs are always in sync. Now we have another sort of a scenario around adaptive cards that talks about access request approvals. Kat is again working on a project and realizes that he doesn't really have access to a necessary document. And hence, he requests his manager, Kat, to provide him the requisite approvals. Again, Kat, thanks to adaptive cards, receives an actionable email in Outlook. She gets to decide the level of access, read, write, or read only, that she needs to grant to Pat, clicks on approve, and that's it. Within a few seconds, Cat is able to help Pat get access and collaborate better. This is how the view appears in Outlook desktop. Click on approve and that's it. And once approved in Outlook, the same state gets refreshed in Teams as well, ensuring that they both always stay in sync. This is how the card appears in Teams. Cat again receives an adaptive card from Contoso bot. She decides to give edit access, click on approve, and see the refreshed card instantaneously. Now I hope I was able to give you an overview of how universal actions help your end users on both Teams and Outlook. I'll again pause here for questions and then hand it over to Shiladitya to take the conversation further.
So I can see your hand up.
There's two. So Eric, did you have a question?
Yeah, I actually put it in the chat, but just wondering, we've been using adaptive cards within a Teams tab app, and we are experiencing, we get the flash update, the activity showing up, but the card itself doesn't show up in the tab app. So we have to do some kind of polling. I was just wondering, this instant update, activity that you're talking about, is this a new behavior that we're expecting to see, or are we expecting to do some polling still in order to get the cards to update in a tab app?
I think this is something that's supported out of the box. So if you were to upgrade your cards to version 1.4 and support Action.Execute, the refreshed cards would work automatically for you.
So in tabs specifically, they are still working on the Action.Execute model and what's the best way to keep the cards up to date. They're exploring the polling approach, but I don't think that's been fully figured out yet.
Okay.
We'll probably do a deep dive on tabs in a community call soon, potentially even the April one, where we can get some more insights into that. But I did talk to the PM of tabs just as recently as a couple days ago, and they're still trying to figure out what is the exact implementation they're going to use for that.
Okay, so this works for chatbot app cards, but not necessarily tab apps right at this point.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
We had a question in chat, and I was discussing that with Thomas like the last days. So as far as I know, to do that, you need a bot in the background right now, and that also goes in line with the question we have in chat. If there's a way to decide if a user wants it in both, that's something I can decide in my bot. So the underlying question is, can I only do that with a bot right now, or can I also do that from Power Apps or wherever? Yeah, I think the answer to that is the whatever generated the card is determining what user experience it gets delivered to. So they'll be generating it to make the demo they just showed. You would be generating an email, attaching the card there, and you would also be either posting a card to a channel or whatever. You're kind of in charge of that. The user, unless they built it in, wouldn't be able to say, I no longer want these emails. Like the back end that's generating the cards would have to bake in the logic if you wanted to. I don't think we're building anything into the Teams or Outlook apps that would let users really kind of control that. I don't necessarily want that. Is that fair to say, guys?
Yep, that's fair to say.
And the synchronization of the cards in the background happens with using the bot framework.
Yes, that happens via the bot framework.
And they'll get to that shortly.
Okay.
All right. If there are no further questions, then I'll request Shiladitya to take it over.
Sure. Thanks, Karan. So now we'll go into what these new features, what the universal action model means for Teams, apart from the universal context. So one of the features that I'm very interested to talk about is contextual views or role-based views. So all users in a team today see the exact same view of the adaptive card. So essentially, everyone is seeing the same chat, the same adaptive card in, for example, a channel, for example, a group chat. However, there is need in certain scenarios for certain people to see different actions or different information, so as to take some so as to take or complete an action. So I'll take the example of say approvals. You would want someone in a group, like someone sending an approval in a group chat would you'd want only the approver to get the accept and reject buttons. You wouldn't want someone else in the chat to accidentally approve or reject your card. So that is where you'd need the approver to get maybe some more information, maybe the accept and reject buttons themselves. So that is what contextual views now allows you to do. So certain people can now get differentiated information and actions. So now taking you through the approval scenario, the requester is Daniela, who wants to request a discount for her long-term customer from her manager, Mary. And Mary, who's the manager of Daniela, will be the approver for the customer discount. So here I'm showcasing two screens. The left one is Daniela's. She's the requester there. And once she sends the approval within the group chat, you'd see that on the left is Daniela's view, and she only sees the option to cancel the request. While on the right, you see Mary's view, and she has the option to approve, reject, and view details. She also has the option to add more comments and before she accepts or rejects it. So that is a very great power that is coming in with the contextual views and the universal action model. So now let us take you through one more example, because I think demos speak for themselves, and they can help you on light up many more scenarios within your own solutions. So this is an example of a ticketing app. So let us run you through it. Karan, could you play it?
Megan is a safety inspector at Contoso who routinely inspects the sites and reports incidents. Let's see a typical day at Megan's work and how the new capabilities we talked earlier provide rich contextual experiences to her and the team. Megan observes that one of the boilers at a remote site had broken down and files a new incident through Contoso Report Incidents message extension in Teams. The incident card gets posted in the group, and you can see that the message, although posted by the bot, shows it being sent by Megan. This demonstrates the sender attribution feature we talked about a while back. To easily demonstrate role-based views, I've logged into 3 different user accounts. Of Megan's, who files the incident, of Alex, to whom the incident is assigned to, and of Nestor, who represents the rest of the group members who are not involved in the process. As you can see, we have different buttons present on the same card for all the 3 different users. When the incident was created, Alex also received the same card over email. Let's check that out. As you can see, Alex received the same card, which was posted in Teams, and he could still see contextual buttons which are only visible to him. As the incident gets resolved, you can see that even the cards that were posted in Teams get updated. This demonstrates role-based views as well as universal actions in cards in Teams.
So that was an example of role-based views and universal actions, both working for a ticketing application. So you could have similar scenarios or approval scenarios like Karan talked you through, and you could definitely go into those using the new universal actions model. So basically, from what we've talked about till now, there are some core capabilities. One is the fact that the actions are universal now. They are on Outlook, Teams, and more platforms soon. There's the refresh property that is coming in. So that is how refresh will start working on both Teams and Outlook. On Outlook, you already had auto invoke, and on Teams, you now have the refresh that's going to come in. So refresh is what enables what you currently saw. So refresh is, like David already mentioned in the chat, refresh is what powers role-based views. There's a lot of potential on what you can do with refresh. You could actually start giving up-to-date views as well with that. There are some. Sorry, did someone have a question? Okay, so I want to talk about one more use case there, before we jump into like the behind the scenes or some Q&A. So the next thing that I want to talk about is sequential workflows on Teams. So today on Teams, essentially whatever card you send, like we talked about, it's the same for everyone, right? So you, if you want to progress through a set of workflows, you would have to send one card after the other continuously. And then as well, like it would be like it cannot be replaced, like it's clogging the chat essentially. So with Action.Execute, with the capability to actually replace the card in place, you can progress through a workflow within the same card. So we're taking the example of a catering bot here. So I'm picking up chicken to eat, tea to drink, and I get an order confirmation here. And I decide to confirm the order, and I can just go to the recent orders. So now, essentially, I progressed through that catering bot. I ordered whatever food I wanted to, and during this entire thing, I just had it within one card. So basically, within that one card, I was able to update the update the entire scenario and complete it. The next thing that one more thing that we can do using this using sequential workflows is different people within the same chat can be on different stages of ordering food. They could be on some people who may not have even opened the chat. They would come and see the first view, while some people who have could have already placed their orders, could be in the process of placing the order, but the view would not change for them. So that is another interesting capability that is coming in. So in terms of product and engineering investments, so like first step, of course, is envisioning the scenarios, something that you might have already got on Teams and you want to get to Outlook, something you might have already got on Outlook, you want to get that to Teams. You need to envision those scenarios for for cross app, and then you need to design those adaptive cards. You may already have them. If you already have those adaptive cards ready, all you need to do is move action.submit or action.http to action.execute, and then upgrade the schema version to 1.4. If you don't have them, then create the new cards with action.execute. Now, if, for example, you're already on Outlook and you're looking to come to Teams, then you need to create a bot and register for Outlook and Teams as channels. If you're already on Teams, you'd already have a bot, and that is what you'd be able to just register for Outlook as a channel and then send out adaptive cards there. So that is essentially how this works. Stopping for questions here before we go in behind the scenes.
Yeah, me again. Sorry.
Hey, Dan.
Now that, well, I can do a lot more on my bot now in terms of checking user permissions and making decisions which user gets which card and all that. Is there any limitation in terms of response times and all that?
So there is a limitation in terms of number of users who get automatic refresh. So that is something
I know that.
Yeah, so that is the limitation today, and we are actually increasing that. And when we sometime next month, when we go GA, you'd be able to see like that number going up. Earlier, when we talked last, we have like currently in dev preview, we are keeping that number down as 5, where you can test out your scenarios, and we're planning to increase that number when we'll be going GA.
Will you eventually make that configurable?
That is configurable, like for what
like
do you mean?
That I sort of can decide how many my bot can handle.
Right. So currently we are keeping it at a universal number, like a standard number for all bots, and so that we don't overwhelm bots with a lot of responses as well. Like there'd be a lot of invoke calls, but yeah, in the future we could be looking at that.
Yeah, just to add, that's the max cap that we have. But of course, like for your scenario, if you require a lesser number, you could always use that.
But there's no limitation in terms of like response times, how fast my bot has to respond with an updated card.
So I can help you with some guidance on that. At least for Outlook, we request all our partner developers to ensure that we get response within a threshold of 3 seconds. And I'll also request Shiladitya and Saurabh to chime in around the latency requirements to be on Teams. However, from Outlook's perspective, there is a clear directive to our partners to ensure that at P95, at 95th percentile, the latency shouldn't exceed 3 seconds for the partner cards.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. Yep, thank you.
So going into behind the scenes, so this is what the current inconsistent action model looks like. So we'll just be talking about what's changed and pretty much covering what's happening behind the scenes and what's changed here. So on Outlook, you would have your web service on the backend, while on Teams, when you were using Action.Submit, you would have had your bot, which was doing the legwork there. So because of this different model, that is why you were having to define and handle two endpoints separately for Teams and Outlook. Now with the common Action.Execute model coming in, you have the bot as the common backend that's going to do the legwork for you. And with that, you could send both to Outlook and Teams your cards on both places, and the bot would be able to maintain both of them in sync. So once again, like talking about Action.Execute, capability to return cards which replace the card in place, and the refresh model. So this is the part that replaces auto invoke, and for Teams, this brings in refresh. So within this, there is a user IDs field that we wanted to talk about on Teams. So within user IDs, the users that you mentioned, those would be the users that would be getting auto refresh. So you can just mention those user IDs, and those users specifically would get a call to the bot when the card is rendered. And you then have the option to provide the user the updated card or a role specific or a user specific view. So this is how you create that context for your user. So this is the auto refresh flow on Teams. When the card is viewed, basically then an auto refresh request goes out to the bot, like we talked about, and the user specific card is then sent back and rendered. Also, there is another flow for getting the refreshed card, which is whenever you can do a message update there, and that would also trigger an auto refresh request. So there, the user specific card would then be sent in the event of a message update, and you can render that. That was what we had on behind the scenes. So I think we are at a time when we can take questions. Only a couple, I guess. Matt, how are we doing on time?
Yeah, we're doing great. I will go ahead and take over sharing, give people some quick links just to kind of wrap up, and then we can start taking any questions. Ideally on this, since we have some folks on the team, but don't hesitate to ask other questions. So again, thanks everyone a ton for joining. Here's a handful of resources. Definitely take a look at our roadmap. Definitely look at templating. We haven't talked about it in a little while, but if you're not using templates to build your cards in the back end, you're probably spending a lot of frustrating time. Our code base on GitHub with our most recent session, I guess, was build of last year. So things like that. And always like to shout out madewithcards.io. Where people are constantly kind of submitting these really helpful cards that just, it's a great community inspired and community run website that lets people share common scenarios and neat things they've built with adaptive cards. Bunch of other M365 developer community calls exist, so check those out if you haven't. And this recording will be up on YouTube, usually within a couple days, and we try and write a blog post associated with it. The next call will be April 8th. At 9 a.m., so the same exact time. So we really hope to see you there. Send it to your friends, and we'll keep doing these. And with that, yeah, let's talk about what people, if you have any feedback for the team.
Sure, Matt, and let me take a moment to reply to the two questions that came just in. So Rob, in terms of our timelines, we would be ready with Action.Execute on both Teams and Outlook within a month. And that's when you would also be able to try out the syncing between both these hubs. So I hope that clarifies. And to answer Haridas's question, the sync of actions between Teams and Outlook is going to be supported 1.4 onwards. So yes, that's the exciting new capability that we have introduced in 1.4.
Great. I see one hand up. I'm trying to toggle over to that screen. Whoever does have your hand up, though, feel free to unmute and share what you had, if that's.
Hi, Matt. This is Ibrahim. I have a question that that universal actions need to be supported in RN platform also, or how we want to plan ourselves on that sort.
Yeah, that question came up earlier, and I had mentioned that we have a chat with your team, I think, set up for next Monday where we can talk about that. But yeah, that would be great. They were asking, and I suggested they just post on GitHub with that question, and keep an eye on GitHub for when it would be available in the React Native renderer.
Sure, that will be really great if we set up next week on call and we can start on that. Yeah.
Great. Awesome. Yeah.
There's one more question asking, will the API for the bot be made available to allow us to build other communication channels to leverage these capabilities? For example, SharePoint, adaptive cards, and other things probably. So will other channels in the bot framework support that as well?
That's a great question. I'll take a stab at it. We hope so. Our goal and why we're calling it the universal action model, Teams and Outlook are really just a starting point. The protocol is open-ended enough that it can even work on non-Microsoft. So I don't know if anyone from Cisco is on the call today, but our hope is that we design it in such a way and we will make it as easy as possible for other channels to be supported, whether they're in Microsoft 365 or whether they're outside of it. That is the hope. How easy it is, that's an open-ended question. The SDK support specifically for kind of implementing your own channel and things like that, it will most likely, especially early on right now, it'll be a lot of heavy lifting. Not a ton of work, but you would be kind of on your own. We do have a reference implementation in JavaScript that would help you at least build a host app that connects to the channels. But the protocol itself is relatively straightforward, but the SDK support that you might rely on would be coming at a later date.
Yeah, but the backend architecture that you guys displayed for the bot being the front backend for both Outlook and Teams, the question is can I interact with that API at that layer and get the the same kind of auto updates and stuff like that on a separately built channel? So
yeah, you should be able to. I'm going to speak somewhat outside of my own area of expertise, but any bot, if it's a Microsoft bot, there's what's known as a direct line channel, which just gives you raw access to the activity feed. You can post things. So that is typically, I think, how they recommend just getting access to it. But that should work.
And then is that available now, or is that coming with 1.4 because of the change in the
the direct
architecture
channel works now?
I'm not sure, but in past the bot framework was only sending. Well, it was only communicating between one instance. So your bot was communicating with Teams, and now they changed that. So the bot framework, so your bot can effectively talk to multiple channels at once. I'm not sure if that's rolled out everywhere and if that works for any channel, basically.
Yeah, I guess that's the question. And is it a 1.4 feature, or is this something that's available now?
Well, that would be a different version, because 1.4 is effectively the adaptive cards version, right, and not the bot version. So that's two different things. But yeah,
there is a new activity type that David, I think, on the call. I don't know if there's anyone else from the bot framework team, but there is a new activity type that flows through but it's generally the same protocol. Like it would flow through direct line and with just a new activity type, which is an Action.Execute, which has the metadata and things like that. That said, I'm sort of trying to fumble my way through that answer. And I think the easiest thing, Eric, if that's actually important to you, let me just drop my mail in chat here. And feel free to reach out, and we can loop in the bot framework team and get to the bottom of it, especially if you'd like an answer sooner rather than later. Just drop me an email.
Okay,
in a nutshell, it's a new type. It's a new type of invoke activity, and it's just going to flow to your bot. You're just going to have to handle type adaptive card / action is all.
Okay. With let me connect offline. I know we're at time, so but
sounds good.
I'm looking forward to you using it. So thanks.
Cool. Yeah. Well, thanks everyone. Let me just kind of close this here. I'll at least stop the recording. I can hang out for a little bit longer if there are additional questions, but I did just want to kind of wrap up the recording. I really appreciate everyone jumping on the call, especially Karan and Shiladitya for sharing that stuff. And it's cool. 1 month from now, 1 month-ish, within the next month or so, you should start to be able to use all this stuff. And so that's an exciting moment. So we hope to see you again next month. And with that, thanks a ton. And we'll stay on a little while longer, but I'll end this now. Thanks.